So we just got a new structure deck, Blazing GEARFRIED, and it is just so bad. But as one of the few remaining Duel Links channels who still hasn't abandoned the game and migrated to Master Duel, I'll try my best to make a free-to-play GEARFRIED deck that's remotely playable. So basically, GEARFRIED decks revolve around this new boss monster, Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED, and it's just a big beater that negates monster effects. And that's it. We'll go over the problems of this deck in a minute, but first let's go over the cards one by one. First off, we have the main monster of the deck, which we just talked about. You can special summon this card by banishing an equip spell from your field or graveyard. And at the start of damage step, if this card attacks, you can equip one face-up monster on this card. As an equip spell that gives it 500 attack, you can equip your own or your opponent's monsters. And because it equips during the damage step, it won't allow you to switch the attack targets if you decide to equip one of your opponent's monsters. And when a monster effect is activated, you can send one face-up equips card you control to the graveyard, negate the activation, and destroy that monster, and all effects in this card are hard once per turn, so even if you have a multiple of this card, you can only use them once every turn. Anyway, we have a bunch of Ignites, they're all low rarity. We have the 2 level 5s and 2 level 4s. And the reason why we're playing them is because, one, they are fire warriors, which are required for the skill, and secondly, these cards all search our main boss monster, because our boss monster is, of course, a fire warrior monster. We can search it with the pendulum effects of any of our Ignites. If we have 2 Ignite cards in our pendulum zones, we can destroy both of them to add a fire warrior type of monster from our deck or graveyard to our hand. And obviously we're most likely gonna grab Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED, but in certain times, if you have let's say 3 or 4 copies of Ignites, you might want to grab another Ignite first and then pendulum summon your Ignites, and then after you pendulum summon, you will activate their effects again and pop your skills to get your Phoenix GEARFRIED. So this allows you to make a pendulum summon before you pop your skills to get your search. Anyway, the remaining of our deck is all traps. We're playing 2 Floodgate. Of course, we are going to obtain this using box chips, which makes this card free to obtain. We have a copy of Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, which is pretty good against this meta. It doesn't really work against speed droids, but it does work really well against both Orcust and Raging Pendulums. Next up is a pretty spicy tech. Magic Deflector can negate all equip, field, continuous, and quick play spell card effects on the field for the rest of the turn. Even though it does negate equip spells, which our deck kind of revolves around, it does actually destroy the equip spell. So we will lose the attack gain for the equip spell that we gain from the skill, but that's fine because we still have the equip spell, which means we could always just send it to the graveyard to negate the opponent's monster effects. But what is so good about this card is it negates quick play spells, which means it negates MST, Cosmic Cyclone, Book of Moon, Forbidden Chalice, all those kind of stuff will be negated by this single card. And it negates it for the rest of the turn, so it's pretty useful for that. So the main usage of this card is if your opponent tries to Book of Moon your GEARFRIED, you can just flip this card open and you can negate the Book of Moon, which is pretty helpful, which allows you to retain your negate. And of course, we're playing 3 copies of Cloak and Dagger, which is probably the best free to obtain trap that we have, aside from Floodgate Trap Hole. And in our extra deck, we are playing a whole bunch of generic stuff. Playing 2 Dark Rebellions, because it is now obtainable through a structure deck that we can buy twice using only gems. We are playing Great Magnus, which can be summoned by a copy of Dreadnoid. We are playing a single copy of rank 5. Wind Up is just pretty good to have a rank 5 in general, and this could pop back row, which might come in handy. We're playing some links as well. We're playing Link 3 in Power Code Talker. We're playing a Link 2 in Puzzle Lumino, and another Link 2 in Code Talker. And for our skill, we're playing the new one. The new Salamander and the Phoenix skill allows us to normal summon Phoenix GEARFRIED without tributing, which we're not playing in this deck. And also, once per duel, you can reveal a Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED from your hand and put a legendary sword into your graveyard, and also put a Salamandra face down on your field. So that basically sets up the requirements for both effects of Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED, because you can summon it by banishing the legendary sword from the graveyard, and then immediately equip it with your Salamandra, which gives it a bit of attack and also gives it a monster negate, which is pretty helpful. So basically, a single Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED is what you need to summon it. And here is the expensive version. We're not playing Ignites in this version, and yeah, this is probably the best you can do with the cards we have right now. It's not very good, obviously. We are playing 3 copies of the normal Phoenix GEARFRIED because it's a normal summonable big beater, I guess. And we're playing 3 copies of Roland, and the reason why we're playing it is because of 2 reasons. One is because it's a quick effect equip, so you can always treat it as an equip spell to give your Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED a negate. And secondly, it is level 1, and also when it's sent to the graveyard, it searches a Fire Warrior or a equip spell, which we're not playing equip spells. But it's pretty useful because we are playing a copy of Link Karibo in our extra deck. So we can just always normal summon our Roland, link into Link Karibo, and then during the end phase we can get its search and grab ourselves a follow-up in Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED or just the regular one. And other than that, we're only playing the bare minimum for monsters. And the rest is all staple spells and traps. Playing 3 lands, 3 chalice, Ice Dragon's Prison, and 3 warning point. So that makes our 22 card deck. And for the extra deck, it's also generic season links, but this time we're not playing any Ignite, so we're only playing the rank 8 Galaxy Eyes engine, and also just the good generic links like Nightmares and also Rasta Liger. I actually don't see a lot of people play this card. I think this card is pretty good if you're trying to push for lethal. It's basically access code, but we don't have access code in Duel Links, and this is probably the best that we could have. So yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what this deck does well and what this deck does not do well. So obviously this deck has a 1-card combo in Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED itself. You can use your skill to basically summon it for free, and you also get its Alive Negate. And it's a big monster. And also, it's a monster negate, so it's pretty good. And also, it technically has more attack than Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, so you can beat over it. And it's a pretty hard monster to beat over because it itself has a 3k attack, and your equip spell gives it 700 more attack. So, yeah, you will have to use the card effects to actually get rid of it most of the time. And that's actually not that hard, which brings us into the weaknesses of this deck. This deck relies heavily on our single boss monster, and our boss monster relies on equip cards, which means not only can it be stopped by a Book of Moon, it can also be stopped by a Cosmic Cyclone, MST, and just any back row removal in general, because if your opponent clears their equip spells, your negate will be gone. And also, the skill, as good as it is once per duel. So you can only use the effect to set up your graveyard with equip spells only once per game, which basically makes your follow-ups really difficult. You can only have your first Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED with a live negate, and even though you have the equip spell in your graveyard, the Salamandra, if it goes to the graveyard, you can use it for your second Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED summon, but that means you don't have a equip spell to equip it immediately. You have to rely on its second effect to actually steal your opponent's monsters as an equip card, which is actually quite difficult in a subsequent turn, because your opponent will oftentimes already have negations or just staple back row setup, so that's typically not going to happen that easily. And thirdly, this card is not very easy to search, even though we have all these Ignite cards to search it. it's still not very consistent because you need 2 Ignite cards to actually get the Phoenix GEARFRIED to your hand, and also playing these Pendulum monsters means that you have less space for just generic back row. So even though we're playing a pretty much a healthy balance of Pendulum monsters and back row in this free-to-play deck, oftentimes you find yourself not having enough Pendulum monsters to actually activate their effects, or too many Pendulum monsters, which makes you vulnerable to basically any disruption because you are only relying on a single monster negate, which can be prevented very, very easily if you don't have any staple back row to support it. So yeah, that's basically the main problems of this deck. It will probably get better if we get more support in the upcoming boxes. There are some really crazy Gemini support that might come out, or maybe more Infernoble support that just gives the deck better targets for fire warrior monsters to meet the skill requirements, but we will have to see for that. Okay, so let's go over to some of our replays. Our first replay is going against another GEARFRIED player, and we are going first, which is wonderful. We love going first because we have a monster negate that we can set up. And we drew 3 scales, wonderful. That means we could pendulum summon one of our monsters, plus having our Immortal GEARFRIED in our field as well. So we're gonna pop our scales to grab another scale, so we could pendulum summon one of our Ignites back, and then we can activate the pop effect a second time. This time we're gonna grab our Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED. We're gonna activate the skill to give us a bunch of equip spells to meet the requirements of our Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED. We're gonna activate our equip to equip it to our boss monster. And set 1 pass. Our opponent is also going to activate their skill, but the summon effect of Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED is a monster effect, so we could negate that effect to prevent them from even summoning the monster. And they're going to normal summon Roland to special summon the Silent Swordsman, and at the end phase they're going to grab a second Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED and pass it back to us. They're going to gain a bit of attack, it's fine, we're going to attack and steal their Silent Swordsman, so we get another negate, and they don't have an out to our board. Okay, in our second game, we are also very lucky to be going first. And honestly, I don't really know what our opponent is playing at this point. They're playing a pretty weird skill, so we can't really tell from that. But we do have enough skills to actually do our combos, so I guess that's pretty nice. We're gonna again scale the 2 scales and then pop them to grab a 3rd scale, and then we're gonna scale remaining 2 scales in our hand to pendulum summon one of our pendulum monsters, pop our scales again, this time grabbing Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED, and then activating our skill to give us a whole bunch of equip spells. We're gonna equip to our boss monster, set 1 and pass. We're really hoping that our opponent is playing Orcust, and they're not even playing any dark monsters. So Shadow Imprisoning Mirror is completely useless, but that's fine. Our opponent tries to activate the effect of Gamma, we will negate that. They have a Reborn for that, but they cannot use their effect more than once per turn, so that is fine. So we're going to make an Xyz monster. He's going to tribute to summon a monster from the deck, which allows him to mill another Magnet Warrior. We will steal our opponent's monster. We're going to attack for a bit of damage. And our opponent is going to have the field spell, which might be a problem, but because we can negate his monster and also destroy it, it prevents our opponent's field spell from activating because it requires your opponent to have a monster on field. So we can clear our opponent's board and attack for game. Okay, so this time we are playing the expensive version, and our opponent is playing Speedroids, but that's fine because we're going first. So, we are really hoping that we at least draw in Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED, which we do. That is wonderful. We could immediately use our skill to summon it from our hand by setting up the equip spells that we need. We're going to summon the GEARFRIED, we're going to equip, and then since we already have a Immortal Phoenix GEARFRIED, we could use the Search of Roland by summoning it and making a Linkuriboh, And during the end phase, we could grab a Phoenix GEARFRIED instead of the Immortal one. Our opponent is going to Book of Moon. That's fine, and we don't have lands in our back row. But when our opponent tries to summon the target combo, we will try to Warning Point, which they will chain lands. Okay, that means they were going to be able to make their Synchro Monsters. They're going to get a free draw from that. They're going to use a skill to mill a Red-Eyed Dice, which allows them to climb onto their Clear Wing Synchro Dragon. And they can use their skill again, this time to summon a Red-Eyed Dice and make Kite Drake. They're going to attempt to blow up our board, which we could activate our Chalice to negate. They're going to attack with a Linkuriboh, and I don't know why they decide to keep attacking, but we're going to win anyway, because we are going to steal their monster and attack for lethal. If you made it this far into the video, I have one last message for you. This deck is bad, don't buy the structure deck. Thanks for watching, goodbye.